If a risk has a tiny probability, but a civilization-scale consequence, what number do you put in the spreadsheet? That is where ordinary risk analysis starts to break. Modern finance trains us to believe everything can be modeled. Volatility, expected return, correlation, inflation, default risk, currency risk, insurance premiums. Everything becomes a number. And numbers are useful. But some risks resist numbers. Not because they are imaginary, because the variables are too complex, the data is too limited, the consequences are too large, and the system changes once the risk begins unfolding. Nuclear war is one example. So is sudden capital control. So is civil disorder. So is a cyber attack on financial infrastructure. So is a food shock. So is a banking crisis. So is a war that spreads in a way no one expected. You can estimate these risks. You can debate them. You can model scenarios, but you cannot price them the same way you price normal volatility. That matters because if a risk cannot be priced cleanly, people often pretend it is zero. This is one of the most dangerous habits in modern life. If a risk feels uncomfortable, abstract, or too large to process, people mentally remove it. They say, that probably will not happen. And maybe they are right, but probably is doing a lot of work. What probability? Over what time period? Under what conditions? With what assumptions? And what happens if the assumption fails? The problem with tail risk is not just probability, it is consequence. A 1% risk of a small inconvenience is not important. A 1% risk of a life-altering event is very important. A 1% risk of a civilization-scale event is not something a serious person can dismiss casually. And if the probability is unknowable, the logic becomes even harder. What do you do with a risk that might be very low but cannot be measured and could change everything? You do not build your whole life around it. That becomes paranoia. But you also don't ignore it. That becomes fragility. The rational middle ground is resilience. You build a life that performs reasonably well across many futures. Not perfectly, reasonably. You own some assets that are liquid, some that are portable, some that are productive, some that are physical, some that are outside your primary jurisdiction, some that are useful even if the spreadsheet stops updating. This kind of usefulness is difficult to price precisely, but that does not make it worthless. In fact, the things most difficult to price may become most valuable when models fail. A spreadsheet can tell you expected yield. It cannot tell you the value of having somewhere to go. It cannot tell you the value of having food, water, shelter, and place when abstract systems are under stress. That is why Base 2 is not only interested in return. Return matters, but usefulness matters too. Optionality matters. Robustness matters. Real-world capability matters. The point is not to know the future. The point is to own assets and build systems that remain useful when the future refuses to fit the model. This is not a prediction, and it is not fear marketing. It is a stress test. Which assets still matter when the model breaks? That is the kind of question Base 2 studies inside the Telegram community.